welcome. Well, I think your microphone is right there on the...
Testing. Okay.
Well, welcome to Oklahoma.
Yeah. Be back.
Be back. So you've been to Oklahoma before.
I have. I've been here a bunch of times over the years. I never shot anything here, but I do these movie tours where I host screenings of my films and
oh yeah, that's right. I was at the
the
rodeo last night for a Twister screening, and I did see there was a poster that you had.
We did one there, yeah. So good to be back here in Oklahoma. By the way, does anybody else get dry eye out here? It's a thing here, right? I was going, is it me? Because I don't have enough Visine in the damn. But it's great to be here. It's a great state.
Yeah, I've had a lot of fun here so far. Cool. I'm going to start off by asking you about of course, the standard question about the Brack Pack. Sure. And how did you feel at that?
Where are they now, by the way? Oh, okay.
Did you have a hard time escaping that typecast, or did you kind of embrace it during that time?
Great question. I think as a kid, it kind of freaked me out. First, the whole thing of notoriety. I feel I'm very kind of pragmatic about the industry in many ways. So I feel like as a kid, yeah, I think it kind of freaked me out as a little bit. That idea of being typecast, or even just recognition back in the '80s when I was a kid, because it was awkward at first. It's kind of an awkward, weird thing to adjust to, even for a so-called adult,
Right.
But then over time, I just wanted to build my career and do different things. So if I had any MO, it was just that, to be grateful, to thank God to the blessing of having a creative life, and then to just keep going, just keep chipping away at it, as my father used to say. And so I think in terms of the stereotype question, yeah, I made a pointed effort just to keep going, number one, and also to mix it up in terms of the roles, I think. It's interesting. I think a lot of actors try to, or maybe sometimes create this perception that they chose this and they chose that. I think, the opportunities choose you in a way. So just working with a sense of gratitude and staying humble about it. And always with the idea of the long view, wanting to stay around. And even as a kid, I wanted that longevity just to keep going. So I just thank God that I've had a creative life. And to me, at this point, the gift is still to be doing it. I'm 57. And I started when I was 8 years old. I worked with Steve Allen, the late, great Steve Allen. So 7 or 8 years even before I worked and met John Hughes, I'd done a play with Steve when I was a little boy. So as I said, I just thank God for my life and to be able to do something that's fun and creative. Because let's face it is make-believe for a living, guys. Some actors have to be reminded of that shit. I'll leave their names out. You can fill in the blanks. You've met many of them. Anyway. Please don't look me in the eye when I sign. Okay, anyway. That type of shit.
You mentioned starting at 8 years old. How does one get involved at 8 years old? And especially, parents, being supportive, taking you to auditions, that's obviously you have to have a support system there to start.
Right, no, great question. So I was raised by a single mother who was, from an Irish, Italian, Catholic family in Boston. My mother remarried to my stepfather, who adopted me when I was age 12. But due to my mother's strength and my mother's courage, because she left Boston and drove across country with me as a 2-year-old baby, and she was a single mom. And then we moved to New York City in 1972 or 3, and she was literally singing for our supper. My mother was a jazz and a singer that would perform. So, I think that foundation just gave me all I needed. I really learned that respect for having a craft and doing something creative through my mother's eyes in a way. In terms of, stage parenting, that's what's interesting. She wasn't that. I think because we moved to New York City, that gave me access. And so as a kid, as I said, I did this play with Steve Allen. I was a little boy. I auditioned for Steve at the Waldorf Astoria way back in 1976, yeah. And then that led to, getting an agent, in New York City and doing commercials. And, to be very honest, it was just a hobby that I had fun with. It was something I did after school. But it's weird, when I look back at my life, I really did have a work ethic as a young kid, and I'm really glad. And I think I attribute that to my mother, seeing her work so hard to raise me until I was 12, and then she remarried. So it's a long answer. Sorry, guys, I'm getting there. But, the idea of learning commitment and learning to sacrifice, and at the same time, she wasn't the type to follow me around with a hairbrush or anything like that. I need it today, though. Damn it. I'm going gray. But I think access to New York City and having those opportunities was really, really instrumental for me. And also growing up in a big, crazy city like New York is, it just showed me what was possible.
Right.
And that there's so much culture and so much to learn just being in a city. All these years later, I want to run from cities. I actually like being out in the country a lot more. But anyway, yeah.
Did you go to a lot of shows and things like that as you were growing up?
You know, I didn't because it wasn't something my mother could afford, so we really didn't go to,
Oh, okay.
to see Broadway and stuff like that. But over the years and the years since, I love doing that. I love taking my wife to New York and seeing musicals and plays and all that. I also think it's very rejuvenating, too, because you see the excitement and the joy and the passion of young artists, people that are really committed to a life of creativity. And that's impressive and inspiring, you know. And in certain forms of you know, a creative life, there's no guarantees, of course, but there's also, it's not a big paying life. Like if you're going to be a musician or even someone that works on Broadway, so you really have to love what you do, as that old adage goes, you know. So.
And then speaking of New York City, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about Saturday Night Live. And you were just a part of the documentary series.
Yeah.
Anybody see the SNL 50th series?
Did you guys see that? Yeah, it was on
There's
Peacock.
an entire episode titled "The Weird Season."
Yeah, yeah.
And you did some sit-downs with them as well.
Yeah,
right?
it's interesting how that happens. It was for the last 40 years. I mean, first of all, the show debuted, as you guys know, in 1975. And, you know, when I was in New York with my wife,
Right.
taking part of those great festivities, it was amazing. It wasn't lost on me. I was like, wow, I started a year later, in 1976, as a little kid. So, but what an incredible show to be a part of. I loved it as a kid. I used to have to ask my mother to stay up to watch it in the 70s. I was a huge fan of all the original cast members. And then, hi, baby, it's okay. My stories are boring, I'm sorry. So then you know, I was just amazed when I got the call from Lorne Michaels. It was just an incredible thing, because it meant so much to me. And I was literally at home a year or two before that watching Eddie Murphy and those guys,
Right.
you know. So when I got the call, I was just so nervous, but really excited. And then when you do that show, I tell you what, it's a grind. I mean, it's like a 6-day-a-week job. You know, everybody comes in on a Monday, everybody starts writing, doing sketches, and doing all their things. And on Wednesday, we have a big read-through, and then Lorne Michaels sits at the head of the table, brings in all the department heads, and basically whatever gets the most laughs,
Right.
he takes those notes, goes back to his office, and then from Thursday on, folks, we'd come to work at, you know, 10 a.m., still show business hours, you know, and we'd rehearse all day long at 30 Rock, amazing. Wednesday, Thursday, like till 11 o'clock at night, we'd be rehearsing. And then on Saturday, one thing a lot of people maybe not know is that you do the show twice. You do it at 7:30, they bring in one audience, and they full show, and then they, you know, that audience leaves, and then we go up to Lauren's office for notes. We have about an hour off, and then we do the show live. So it was incredible. So back to the 50th, it was interesting. So for many years, it was a really tough transitional season for the show, when they weren't sure if it was going to last. So what happened was, it was produced by Lorne from 75 to 80. Another producer came in. So 1985 was Lorne's first year back, and the show was on shaky legs. It really, and we took a beating with the press. So for the last 40 years, I think I kind of tried to bury it. Like, I knew I was a part of it, and I was excited to be there, but I didn't have breakout characters. I wasn't like a big star off the show or anything. But I'll tell you what, when they asked me to take part in that documentary series, it was really cool. I was shooting Wednesday in Dublin, the new show that I'm taking part in, Tim Burton's show. And I reconnected with one of the old producers from the show, a lady named Layla Nabulsi. And I'll tell you what, it was really cool. It was very healing in a way, to kind of just let it go, because that's part of the fun of it. First of all, it's a comedy show. Second of all, lighten up. And then also the idea that that's part of the fun of it. Every week for 50 years, people go, oh, I love that sketch, or this sketch wasn't so great. You know, it's like being a sports fan. You know, you got to go with the ups and downs of whatever season. So I learned a lot on the show. It was really a great experience. And I'll tell you what, to take part in those 2 days events were really wonderful. It was Valentine's night in New York City at Radio City Music Hall. They had all these great bands. Some of you probably saw it on TV. And then on Sunday night, they had a 3-hour special from the studio. And it was just incredible. Like, the whole industry was there. I felt like I was at the Oscars or something. It was really great, yeah. So I got to see Will Ferrell and Adam Sandler and people that I admired. And Sir Paul McCartney was there. I just kept circling him. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to go up to him, but I was like, I couldn't interrupt his conversation. So anyway, but just an amazing experience overall. Yeah.
Do you think right now you could do a season?
I don't think they'd want my old ass back, but I would love to do it. But that was also part of it too, just to acknowledge, because I was such a wild kid, you know, and I think that I was so young. I mean, that's what people say to me in their kindness. They're like, well, you were the youngest member ever, but like no sketches mentioned, because I didn't really have, you know, I didn't have any like great breakout sketches. But I'll tell you what, it's a real learning experience when you're doing that show. It's like rock and roll, theater, stand up, all rolled into one. Right. You know, it's really an amazing thing. So, But so I'm just grateful. So that was one of the things that was really exciting, to take my wife, take part of it, and just thank and salute NBC and Lauren. Yeah.
One of my favorite questions to ask is just that about, you've done a ton of television and film, but it seems like you still kind of fanboy out a little bit. You still get a little bit of starstruck a little bit. Has there been a moment where, besides Sir Paul McCartney, where maybe you tried to talk to somebody and maybe the words didn't come out? Maybe you spoke too much.
Right. Oh no. Yeah. Well, it was interesting. It was really just Paul on that experience on that day, but it was just interesting. It was really great, and also to meet so many people that I was a fan of too. All the men and great women over the years that have been on part of that show, and it was really great. I think everybody shared that same kind of excitement. Like, can you believe we were a part of this? And so it was great, And somebody made a joke too. It's like, based on where everybody that got to sit in the studio on the Sunday night special were only cast members. And I think Jimmy Fallon or somebody made a joke. Maybe it was Bill Murray. I'm sorry, honey, it'll be over soon. They made a joke about, you can tell where you sit in Lauren's mind based on where you're sitting in the bleachers. So I was kind of way back in the top left bleacher. I was in the nosebleeds in deep left center field. But anyway, just a great experience. So it was really an honor to share the night, those 2 nights with my wife, and to meet all these great people. Oh, quick story was really funny. So on the Friday night event, I go to the lobby, and I'm going to get a beverage cocktail, and I'm online. It was so funny. I look behind me, and there's Martin Short, and there's Jason Momoa, and then Alec Baldwin and his wife. It was just like, okay, I guess the 4 of us are not in AA. This is good. All right. And Alec Baldwin actually bought me a drink, so that was cool. So you'll find the Irish guys, the Hawaiian, and Martin Short online there. It was pretty fun. Yeah, it was great.
One thing I want to talk about is within some of your projects that you've done, where you've portrayed, Bill Gates, Whitey Ford, Mutt Lange, right? Like, what is it like to do a project, do a film that is based on an actual person rather than doing a show like The Dead Zone, where you're like, it's fictional?
Sure. Well, I remember that. I'll start with Pirates of Silicon Valley. It was interesting. I worked with a great acting coach on that project, and it meant a lot to me when I got that part. It was great. I remember going into the audition at the TNT building in Century City, and I went there, and my manager at the time had given me a goofy pair of glasses, something like Bill Gates would have worn in the early '80s, And I did the comb over, not unlike today, I just went for it, and I was really excited when I got the part. And then I was positioned by one of the producers with a great acting coach named Steve Bridgewater, who works with Johnny Depp and Brad and a lot of other people. And he coached me for about 6 weeks. And one of the first things he did, just like a coach, he sat me down, he broke out a legal pad, and he said, "What are your goals for this film?" And I said, well, the first thing he asked me, he goes, "Do you want people to see you or Bill Gates?" I said, "Well, Bill Gates." And then he goes, "What's your second goal?" And I said, well, I want the film to be nominated for Emmys, just swinging for the fence, right? As it turned out, it really was. It was really a great experience. So, but in terms of the preparation for that, I was really excited by it. It actually adds a lot of motivation, to answer your question. I think it really inspires you to really go the extra length. So I read all the books I could at the time on Gates, and I'd be listening to him in my headphones on set. I think I drove a lot of the other actors crazy, because I'd be handing them things like, "Here, your guy did this in college. Look, check this out on page 248 or whatever, So it was just an incredible experience, kind of learning about him as a technocrat. Now, quick Whitey Ford story. When I did 61, I got to meet Whitey Ford at the premiere of that movie. And it was so funny. We're in New York, and Billy Crystal, as you guys know, is a big Yankee fan, and he has a lot of good friends. And the late, great Joe Torre was there, and a lot of great players, Jeter and all these other guys. And so I went up, I got the nerve, just like Paul McCartney, but I went in this time. I got the nerve to go up to Whitey Ford, and I go, "Mr. Ford, Michael Hall, sir, it was an honor to play you." He big leagued me like a manager would. He goes, "I hope you had a good curveball, kid," and walked away. I went, "Hold on, Whitey, what the hell?" So those were, and I think to your question, it's very inspiring when you're playing someone, and I think it gives you extra energy to go further and just to do the best you can, I guess.
Right. So you want to respect that. You want to bring that person, as mentioned. So we do have a microphone right there. If you have any questions, feel free to line up. If, by the way, to adjust the mic, there's a little squeeze handle there. You're gonna want to squeeze that to adjust. I want to go back to kind of what we were talking about with New York City and going to musicals and things like that. One of the big things that is on, popular on Broadway is bringing cult classic movies to the stage. The Outsiders, Mean Girls, Legally Blonde. Have there been any projects that you have done, or do you have like a favorite movie that you would like to see given a musical version?
Good question. I don't know if any. I mean, I'm sure. I've seen a number of productions that have done that, like the School of Rock, and you're right. It's a great idea, and it's not cheap to launch a Broadway show. I mean, I have great respect for the theater. I've never really been attracted to it in terms of doing theater acting, but I think there's a lot of room, and like you said, there's a lot of great examples of that where it can be done, and there's music, and it's funny. I did audition for The Outsiders, and sometimes in your career you get these weird honors, like when they released it on DVD. Anybody remember DVDs, by the way? They asked if they could use my audition tape, and I think they included it as like part of the extras of like the actors that didn't get the role, And I remember, again, being a kid, just flipping out, being so excited to go, like, I'm gonna go audition for a Francis Ford Coppola movie, And then it turned out I'd work with him later on SNL because he was friends with Lorne, and he actually directed an episode in our weird year of 1985. So, and then to take it full circle with Mr. Coppola, I was really pleasantly surprised that I was invited to a screening of his most recent film, and I was at Universal, and I got to see him again. So, things like that are really, it's incredible. I mean, I've never lost that sense of awe and appreciation for what I do. Even when I drive on a movie lot, I'm like, wow, I can't believe I'm a part of this, and that I can contribute in some way and not even have a career, still. So it's great, thank God, yeah.
So we have some
Yes,
questions.
sir.
Hello, what's your name?
My name's Christian.
Hi, Christian.
Christian.
So, 80s comedy was a lot raunchier, obviously. A lot of those movies couldn't be made today.
Right.
I think about some of your raunchier scenes, thinking the shower scene in Weird Science and things like that.
We know where he's going, don't we?
I'm just curious, did your mom have to be convinced a lot to let you do that stuff?
Funny. That's funny.
That's a great question.
Okay, yeah, no, that is a great question. Okay, do you guys remember in Breakfast Club when we all get dropped off at the beginning? Okay, I don't know if any of you guys have heard this. That was my mom.
What?
Okay. Oh, no. Okay, now this was John Hughes' idea. What? It was John Hughes' idea, God rest your soul, and thanks for the career, John, to put my mother in the film as my mother, and that is my sister in the film as my sister. What? So my mother remarried, and she had Mary with my stepfather, Tom. What's up, Dad? And that's my mother and my sister. Now, if you guys remember how my mom gets after me in that scene, welcome to my childhood. That continues to this day at 57, and my mom does not play. She's one of 13 kids, Irish, Italian, Catholic mom, and that's my mom. And you better get in there. Look, that's my mom. Like, if I called her right now, she'd be like, what the hell are you doing? So she's, she taught me everything, my mother, as I said, not just to what it means to be an artist, but my faith, which comes first. And yeah, it's funny. So that's my mom in that film. So to your question, yeah, I mean, my mother wasn't the type to come on set. She gave me my space. It was actually one of my aunts, my mother's oldest sister, that was my guardian on set. And she was great. She's like a second mother to me. That's my Aunt Mary. And my mother was often home raising my sister in New York. So yeah, I mean, I'd always get an earful whether I was ready for it or not, but she wasn't on the set with a brush. But she was tough, and she still is. But, I see it now over time, as we all know. We appreciate our mothers and our fathers, and we know where we came from, yeah. But thanks for your question, yeah.
Thank you.
You too, sir.
I love the prospect of your mom having an IMDb page.
Yeah, I know. Tell me about it. And then, by the way, in the film, I don't know if you guys know this, at the end of the movie, when the parents pick us up, that's John Hughes picking me up. So John Hughes decided to play my dad in the film, and he puts my mother in the film as my mother. So that was a really nice thing. And to this day, my mother has a Breakfast Club poster in her kitchen, which is pretty funny. We used to joke at my house, I'd call the 3 John Hughes films, well, actually 4 if you include Vacation. My Puberty on Film trilogy. Very nice. Okay, next. At least I paid for those braces. I'm here all week.
Hi, my
Hello.
name is Maddie. I'm really excited to be talking to you. I met you about 5 years ago, and it was my first time watching Breakfast Club. It was a special screening.
Honey, you talk faster than a New Yorker.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, what did you say? I'm Natalie, and we met where? I'm
My name's Maddie, sorry.
Maddie, hi, Maddie.
I met you about 5 years ago with a special screening of Breakfast Club.
Oh,
and
great.
It was my first time ever watching the movie.
Oh, wow.
So I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you.
I know you get asked a lot about Breakfast Club or Pretty in Pink, like those big movies, but is there any roles that you are really proud of that you just don't get asked enough about, that you're really proud of and want to?
Oh, thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, because that's the first one that comes to people's mind. And I think it has such a beautiful message over time, that we're all more alike than we're different. And that transcends high school for sure. The other thing is it's kind of evolved into a nice kind of anti-bullying message, And I don't know if John It's amazing when I think back when we started working together. I've told some of the nice folks I've met here, like I was 15 and he was only 35 years old. And you're a young lady. You're probably in your 20s?
17.
17, excuse me. Even younger, yeah. So I'm just amazed when I think back, like either we were both 15 or I was 35 at 15 because we just were in sync. So the question was, could you rephrase it again? I'm sorry.
Like, are there any roles that you are the most proud of, or you
That
put
people
in a
don't
lot
know.
of work that you just don't get asked about?
Right. Well, thank you. Well, I did a movie with a gentleman who's from not too far from here, Brad Pitt, who I really respect a great deal. And it was called War Machine, and it's on Netflix. And we made the movie about 10 years ago. And, it was really interesting. I come from a family, I had a lot of veterans. My grandfather served in World War II. I had uncles in the Korean War and Vietnam. So it really meant a great deal for me. So I kind of went all in on that one. I'm proud of the work I did in that film. And it's a really interesting film, too. And that was produced by Brad's company. So I was really inspired again to work with him. And he was a great guy. I really learned a lot watching him, And then I get to the set and he was like, Mike, I was watching you in college with my friends. I was like, damn, Brad Pitt. Can I renegotiate now that I know this? Because I know they're giving you about 30 of the 70 million we're doing to make this movie. But I tell you what, at the end of the movie, I gave as a gift to Dee Dee Gardner, Brad's producing partner, and the director, who was, he had some questions about me. I think I scared him a little bit because I was kind of in character in that film, if anybody's seen it. I played it pretty gung-ho and intense, but at the end of the film, we had a wrap party, and I got a gift for Dee Dee, a gift for David, the director, and I got Brad a picture, actually, of Steve McQueen, who was my favorite actor, and I know that Brad is a big fan of his, too. And it was a picture of him at Le Mans. So 10 years later, I see this F1 movie. I'm going, wait a minute, Brad Pitt. Did you get that idea? No, anyway, so it was great to work with him. That's one of them. War Machine looks great, and it's a good film. And I'm excited to see F1. So that's one film. 61 is, I think, a really good baseball movie that I'm proud of, that people like. I don't know, it's hard, because I'm always thinking ahead. Even when I work, I'm not one of these guys that looks at himself and looks at the playback or any of that stuff. I'm always kind of forward thinking, but that's one that comes to mind. Let me think if there's another one. Yeah, I would say that one, yeah, in recent years. I was also really excited to be a part of Halloween Kills, which became a big hit, but people know about that one, so, and again, I'm just grateful to God. To me, the victory is just to be still doing it at 57, yeah. I'm what? 57? Anyway, thank you for your question.
you.
Nice to see you again.
Hi, what's your name?
Hi, my name is Julia, and I actually had a question about The Dark Knight.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I forgot I was in that too.
And I was just wondering if you had like a favorite memory from that set.
Okay, so this is funny. We're shooting a scene in downtown Chicago, and I think I was more pumped up to be in The Dark Knight than Heath Ledger, Christian Bale, and the rest of them, but I'm probably wrong. But anyway, I was really excited. I had just come off of doing The Dead Zone in Vancouver, and I flew to London, and I had a small part in this film. So one day we were doing the scene in downtown Chicago, and they had Christian's like cool gray Lamborghini or Ferrari, whatever he was riding in the movie, and I'm standing outside. I'm about to do a scene where I'm running into a building with Gary Oldman. I mean, another one of the great actors, right? I'm like, I'm in a movie with Gary. I can't even believe I was in a Batman movie, So we're doing this scene. I run into the building, and the scene's saying whatever. It's kind of just a bunch of guys running into a lobby, kind of an action sequence. But people started thinking that there was like rumors going on that I was going to be playing the Riddler or something. People started thinking, just because I was standing near the car, I was like, what the hell does that have to do with it? But I had a really small part in that role, in that film, and it was a great experience. And it's also a great lesson of humility to learn, like, hey, you know what? It's better to be a small fish in a big pond than to be the star of something that nobody cares to see or watch, So I was really blessed, again, to be a part of that film. I played the newscaster. I worked on it for about 6 weeks, even though I'm in the movie, I'm like on the TV in the background, and I have some other scenes. But to work with Heath Ledger, let me talk about some of the other people who were far more interesting. Heath was incredible. He was really in a zone. He was really a very focused guy, and it was really an inspired performance, as we all know. He was really wonderful in the film. And Christian Bale couldn't have been nicer, too. He was a great guy. But Gary Oldman particularly was an amazing guy to be around. But Christopher Nolan, I mean, incredible, as we all know, just a brilliant filmmaker. In between shots, there's such a coordination of camera people and crew. It was like watching the Pied Piper. Like, we'd get a shot done, and he'd be walking to the next set or whatever, and there'd be like a line of 4 or 5 people following him, like, where are we going next, Chris? But he would often shoot multiple cameras, 3, 4 cameras. When we did that big sequence with the cops and when the mayor's speaking and all that. I mean, that was incredible. They hired about 800 Chicago PD. And it was just a big deal. I mean, a sequence like that took like 3 or 4 days to shoot that, you know. But great experience. And another nice thing, when it made $1 billion, I opened up my mailbox one day and I had a $50,000 check. I was like, hell yeah, I need to be in more billion-dollar movies. What the hell am I doing? I'm working my ass off on basic cable. I need to get out there more. What the heck? Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Hi,
Chris
what-
Nolan, if you're watching, you can hire me again, please.
My name's Barry. Big fan of Stephen King adaptations and, of course, your other movies. But can you give me an example of something memorable from Dead Zone?
Wow, okay, yeah, great question. Well, that was an incredible experience. I got that role because the producer of that show was a gentleman named Michael Pillar, and he and his son had a company called Pillar Squared. Michael Pillar had a really interesting career, and he was a wonderful man. He started out like on an executive level, and then he started writing, and he wound up creating a lot of the Star Trek shows, Deep Space Nine and Voyager and all these things. He was a wonderful guy. He had seen me play Bill Gates, and so he gave me that role. Now, here's Hollywood. The agency that I had at the time didn't let me know. Like, they just passed on my behalf. I won't mention their name, but they have one of those 3-letter things. Anyway. So it was due to his persistence. He kept calling, and for whatever reason, I don't even know why they turned it down on my behalf. And it was through his persistence that I got the job. And just an incredible experience, you know, because to be very honest and humble about it, I started out as a kid, but I struggled in my 20s, you know. And I couldn't get work, and I was trying to break that stereotype mold, and I was like, what the hell, what am I doing, you know? I had done Scissorhands, I'd done Johnny Be Good before that, you know, people were like, you don't know where you fit in a way. So when I got that job, I tell you, I was in my early 30s, and it was just like, thank you, Jesus. Give me the ball. Let's go. I'm ready, you know? And to play multiple characters, it was incredible. The funny thing is I never got a day off because Johnny Smith was like, every time I had a vision, I'd be like standing there watching people in their vision, right? Like I'd go to a vision, and then I'm like standing there. So I had like all the scenes that I had to do, and then every time I had a vision. So I didn't have much time off, but it was a great experience. It really was. I never thought I'd have a show. It really challenged me, I think, to become a better actor. And I loved it when I had episodes where I played multiple roles. And a lot of the stuff, I'll tell you, was really a blessing because it was like very much by accident. Like when I would go into a vision, we kind of created that thing, me and the camera guys at the time, where they would change the frame rate, how we would shoot it. You know, so I would touch something, I would look away, and then the camera guy would then go to the object or whatever I was looking at or whatever. And it created a real interesting kind of formula in a way for that show and what it was. So I was so grateful for that. And the fact that it ran for 5 seasons, you know, it was just an amazing thing. I never thought I'd have a TV show. And I also met my wife up in Vancouver where I shot it. So it was a great experience, yeah. Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we got about 10 minutes left. We got 4 questions. Hello. What's your name?
Hi, I'm Paula.
Hi, Paula.
I met you the other day. You and I have the same birthday month.
Oh, that's awesome, Paula. We're April babies. All right.
My question is for Edward Scissorhands. How was it working with Johnny Depp?
I mean, I love Johnny Depp. I think he's great. I haven't seen him literally since I made that film. But he's a really great actor, a really fantastic actor. You know, when I got to the set, I saw that thing that I had and developed with John Hughes, with he and Tim Burton. They were just in sync, and they were really good friends and creatively aligned and all that. So that was really cool to work on that film. I had a great respect for him, and he was very cool. I used to feel bad because Johnny, they'd bring him in at like 3 o'clock in the morning. He would have like a team of 3 or 4 people. First of all, just getting him in that suit.
Right.
And then they had like little tubes blowing air into it, and then he'd go to the makeup chair, and he had another 2 hours or 3 hours, you know. So he really went through a lot doing it. But I found him to be a super cool guy, very humble, very low key, but he's really a brilliant actor, I think, as we all know. So yeah, I enjoyed it, and it was so great to work with Tim Burton all those years later. I mean, it was so funny. When I got to Dublin last summer and I was shooting Wednesday, I got to email Tim and his producer. First thing I did is when I got to London, I said, I'm in Dublin. I said, "Where's Tim?" They're like, "Tim's in the south of France editing." I went, "Of course he is. He's Tim Burton." And so I emailed Tim personally. I said, "Thank you so much for this opportunity." And then, as a joke, I tagged it with, "You didn't have to wait 34 years to hire me again." But he's wonderful, so I have great respect for Tim Burton. And I think, as we all can acknowledge, his films are like works of art. I mean, they're really just, right? They're just awesome, you know, so much respect to both of them. Yeah, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
I'm sorry, I'd be running all my answers, guys. All right. I didn't know 40 minutes could fly like that.
Hi, my name's Erin. My question was about Weird Science. It's such a fun movie to watch, and it was a little bit different.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if there was like a favorite memory, or if it was just as fun on set as it was on film.
Thank you for your question. There were so many funny memories, you know, seeing the late, great Bill Paxton in that Jabba the Hutt poo-poo emoji suit or whatever the hell that thing was. He was great. Him cracking me on the head. That was a rubber gun, by the way. But I crack up to this day when I see it on TV, and it's like, doink, and they add in that sound when it hits me in the head. That cracks me up. The scene at the blues bar, you know, a lot of that started because I'd come to the set on The Breakfast Club, and I'd often go to John and Nancy Hughes' home on the weekend. My heroes growing up were George Carlin and Richard Pryor, and I would listen to their albums on repeat. And so when I started doing that routine in The Breakfast Club, you know, we're all getting high, and it extends to the Weird Science scene. That came from me coming to the set or often being at the Hughes' residence. And John and I would watch Richard Pryor concert movies, or we'd watch old black and white movies, comedies. So, I mean, I have so many fun memories. They didn't let me drive those cars too much, but when I had the scene at the mall, when I pull up in the 928 Porsche, I think I almost killed somebody on the drive up, but there's that too. So many memories come back. Getting hit with the slushie and then flipping my hair back, you know, like goofy things that happen. So many great memories. And I think with that time with John, it was before it became like a serious career. You know, I was still a kid. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I was just winging it. And he kept egging me on, so I just kept going. But so many great fun memories. So thank you for your question, honey. Yeah, thank you.
Hello, what's your name?
Brian.
Hi, Brian.
Hey, Brian.
So out of all the projects that you've worked on, we know that, I mean, actors take props sometimes. What is the favorite prop that you've taken from any project you've been on?
Oh, actors take props. Okay, that's funny, yeah. Well, I remember on The Dead Zone, because I always loved Christopher Walken, so when I got that part, I'm like, let me go watch The Dead Zone again, the original. He was great in it. And I love the pea coat, and I love the cane, right? But by season 3, man, I wanted to throw that cane in a river somewhere. I was like, damn, I got to walk around with this thing? So I did not keep the cane, but let me see, what else? You know, usually what they give you, you might get a chair back. You know, like when I did Reacher, the director's chair, so I got that. I usually collect those, but on Weird Science, they were cool. John and Universal gave me the whole wardrobe, so I got to keep the clothes from that, which is pretty funny. Awesome. Yeah. Here's a funny, quick story. I had gone to the premiere. Do you guys remember that old movie Perfect with John Travolta and Jamie Lee Curtis back in the day?
Yes,
right? It was about like, remember?
Yes.
Like about it was like in the Jane Fonda size era. Anyway.
Right.
So I just finished Weird Science. I'm in New York. I get invited to that premiere. I'm still like a kid. I'm like, oh, wow, I'm going to premiere. So when I get to the set of Halloween Kills, they took a picture of me, Christopher Guest, and John Travolta, and I'm like wearing clothes from Weird Science. I was like, yeah. So when I got and did the Halloween Kills back in 2019, I found that picture and I showed it to Jamie that, you know, she remembered that night. You know, it was really fun. And she's a great lady too. So anyway, I'm all over the place. It's been a long career, guys. Thanks for your question,
awesome.
man.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Hello.
My name's Jamie.
Hi, Jamie.
Do you have a favorite memory or scene from 16 Candles?
Are you filming us while we're talking, Jamie? Am I being TikToked right now, Jamie? I'm an old dude. I gotta focus in here. Let me pull out my readers. Is that a phone? I'm sorry. What was your question? I was being a wise guy.
Do you have a favorite scene from 16 Candles?
Oh,
Or
okay.
memory?
Well, first of all, guys, that's how Molly thought of me when I did 16 Candles. She wasn't acting too much. It was pretty funny. The car shop scene, that's one of them. That was really funny, you know. What's that in your pocket? Oh, those are lifesavers or whatever. I don't know. Guys, remember that one? And remember all of us dorks in the bathroom with the underwear? That was some funny stuff, too. I'll tell you another one that a lot of people don't know. John Hughes was so cool. He turned to me when we were in Chicago about to start 16 Candles, and we were doing auditions for my geek buddies, right? So it turns out, John that day, this is how cool he was. I'm 15 years old, and John comes to me like about an hour before we were supposed to take part in these auditions, and I was going to read with these other prospective actors, right? And he looks at me, and he goes, well, they're your buddies. I want you to cast them. I go, what? So I actually cast John Cusack. Can you believe that? So Downey, John Cusack, you guys can return some favors now 40 years later, okay? Mic drop. So anyway, just nothing but great memories on it, yeah. And also, oh, the scene when I'm with the girl in the Rolls Royce, oh, I really did almost kill somebody that night too. This is back in the day, and I was actually driving the car. So the old picture car was like 20 feet ahead, and there's 20 people in the back of like a pickup, and the cars and the cameras there bouncing, and I'm like free driving the Rolls Royce. And there's a point where she almost pulls me over, and I'm like, "You gave me a what? A birth control pill?" And I spit it out. And there's a guy like literally crossing the street. If you look in the background, you'll see. I think I almost hit him or the car or something. But it was almost a full collision there. Yeah, that was funny. Anyway. My 00 dumbass, yeah. Thank you, honey.
So the lesson is don't cast you driving a car.
No kidding. Right, exactly. Or get a driver's license before you go to set.
Well, this
I
is
don't know, one or the other, yeah.
So before we wrap up, I'm just going to, as you're closing in on a 50-year career, I mean, there's been a lot of, obviously, a lot of questions about, some of these movies, Breakfast Club, 16 Candles, Weird Science. Obviously, there weren't comic conventions. GalaxyCon wasn't a thing back then. Right, yeah. So what is it like for you to hear the stories from people who these movies still resonate to them, or they watch that, they watch them live in the theater, and they get to come to you and talk to you and tell you their stories. What is that like for you?
Well, it means the world to me because, to be honest with you guys, there was a bit of a press break about a couple months ago. The 5 of us were in Chicago for the Breakfast Club reunion, but I've been doing these shows for years, and I find it just incredible. I love it. I love traveling our country, meeting nice people. Without the audience, there'd be no me, there'd be no shows, there'd be no entertainment. So I'm eternally grateful. I love it. I love meeting people, and it keeps you humble and in your feet. And I look in the front row, and this dog is sleeping. I'm very sorry to you and the infant before the dog's like this. Tell me when he's done, will you? Oh, I love it. That's awesome. I clearly did. And on that note.
So thank you, and thank you all for hanging out with us.
Appreciate it. God bless. Thank you.
Before we go, let's commemorate this with a big group photo.
Oh, yeah, let's do those group shots. I love that. Yeah, thank you all for being here.